Today I thought I would talk about I was meditating yesterday and I was getting a lot of information and kind of like images around snakes. And so I thought I could talk about snakes and kind of like weave it into kundalini energy, and like the rising snake, and also then weave it into the Adam and Eve parable, and we'll just kind of like riff off that. So to start off with snakes and with like deeper meaning of snakes is like when you're thinking about snakes and reptiles in general, they are beings that are resting in the divine feminine a little bit more than mammals. And there's some of the beings that are the most devoted to like to the divine feminine of like love and care and preserving life and nurturing life. And that when that can get co-opted by unconsciousness, right? And the divine feminine is what transforms any unconsciousness into greater divine feminine energy, like the dark chaos of disharmony that is created by pain is what the divine feminine works with to turn all that dark chaos, disharmony into more of the beautiful, peaceful, serene void space of pure black divine feminine energy. And even like goddesses like Kali in the Hindu religion, like her skin is all black to represent how aligned with the divine feminine she is, and she just embodies more of a ferocious aspect of the divine feminine that is one that slays demons, right? Which you can think of as someone who, like in a modern context, that would be a person who helps people probably see their demons and work with their demons as a way of helping them heal their demons. And that Kali is essentially an embodiment or an archetype of that. And that's really what one of the main ways we can heal is aligning our and integrate more of our darkness and shadow is aligning ourselves with the divine feminine energy that welcomes any darkness as it is and accepts it and forgives it. And snakes, they rest more in the divine feminine, or and reptiles in general are more devoted to the divine feminine. But on the other side of that, when they mistake the divine feminine, when they get confused and start to think that their devotion to the divine feminine, when they confuse that devotion to a devotion to pain, or are more familiar with pain, and then end up end up serving their greatest pain rather than the divine feminine heart, is they can become beings of the greatest destruction and chaos as well. And so kind of tying that into like then branching into to how that relates to us as humans is like we will awaken our kundalini energy to a greater degree by aligning ourselves with more divine feminine energy. And does that how do we align ourselves with greater divine feminine energy? And I would say it's about looking at, becoming curious, and playing with your pain, right? The divine feminine dances with its demons. It doesn't say, demons, get the fuck away from me. The divine feminine finds healthy outlets to express the parts of itself that are dark or more animalistic, right? Or even Kali is like an animalistic, a little bit goddess, but she uses her animalistic parts to destroy the darkness that others are suffering from. And like that isn't like literally killing people, but that would be that would be the fire and passion. I feel that when that's unconscious, it ends up being anger and aggression I take out on others, now becomes fire and passion to help heal and serve others, would be the embodiment of Kali in a modern lens. And so, and recognizing that how I avoid pain, how I say this is too ugly for me to express, this is too animalistic or primal for me to give a voice to, is what keeps those parts of you trapped within you. And if the longer they're trapped within you, the more they're going to build up and influence you. And I did an open mic last night where I was talking about, like, when we learn to be more soft and gentle with ourselves is actually what helps us listen deeper, because it creates greater sensitivity, which helps us hear the needs of our body more. And with that, learning to listen to our needs. And if I feel really vengeful or spiteful or really judging someone else, okay, that's my next muse for my next poem I'm going to write, or my next journal entry, and I'm going to express and give a voice to this vengeful and spitefulness, so that way I'm expressing it in a healthy, neutral way, rather than never expressing it, and then someone really triggers me and I end up taking that pain out on them. Or, like, what's another way this, or like maybe we're feeling really strong, like lustful feelings a day, or we're having a little bit of a day where our hormones feel like they're a little bit on in a higher octane, and instead of going on the dating apps and trying to find someone to have like casual sex with, like the conscious way to deal with that was, maybe I take some time, some me time, to express that sexual energy and give myself a little release. But also, like, maybe finding songs on Spotify that are more sexy and that you can sing along with. And this is something I do. I mean, all this stuff I do, and like, to some varying degrees. And like, I'm as I'm teaching it, I'm also teaching this to myself a little. Like, some of it, everything I talk about, I aspire to embody more and more, but some things I'm still growing into a little bit as I talk about it. And so, recognizing I haven't mastered these concepts. I mean, I do live a sober life, and I don't casually date, and I don't have a bunch of casual sex with people, but I'm still learning how to make more time to express my feelings a little bit more. And when I have done the practice of just finding some sexy song, like a song I really like, it's called Worst Way by Riley Green. And like singing that song, it's my like and I'm when I'm feeling really horny or aroused, like, my heart always feels lighter, and I always feel greater peace and greater calmness in me after doing that. And like, singing the song like once or twice, it always brings me relief. And so, learning to listen, that my intense feelings and my intense thoughts, they're not a problem. They're showing me where the disharmony is in my body, where the pain is. And the divine feminine wouldn't say, I can't feel this pain. The divine feminine would become incredibly curious about that pain and go, how deeply could I express these wounds, as a way of turning this pain into beauty. Or, like, let's say we're talking to someone and we feel like we're judging them a little bit. Okay, like, that's not something I need to be hard on myself about. That's one, maybe my mind needs a little bit more love, care, and attention, and I can take time to just go, I love you, mind, and I appreciate your judgments. Thank you for showing me what I'm still healing. Thank you for reminding me and humbling me that I still have pain that I'm working through. Like, that's a side of it. And also, again, turning that judgment into some type of art piece, whether that's painting, writing, singing. It will soften any judgments, and it will soften your darkness into letting go its attachment to pain and remembering the innocence it had forgotten by how it was hurt, which is any path of integration. And we are born pure we are born pure angelic beings, and then we go through an upbringing in a society that beats us up one way or another, and we forget some of that, and then we're not really taught how to work with the disharmony or chaos. And we think that avoidance is the best way to deal with it, and avoidance is what actually keeps you lost in pain. And the moment you can become curious of, why am I experiencing these feelings or thoughts? Why am I experiencing these symptoms? Can I give greater loving attention to this area of my body? Can I learn to express the pain I'm feeling in this area in a healthy way? Is like, oh, everything becomes easier when we start to do that. And that is the real path of awakening the divine feminine. And I would even say it's a real path for anyone in spirituality, is it isn't all about spiritual practice. And like, you can think spiritual practice and artistic expression is like the yin and yang for each other. And if we really wish to be enlightened is balancing out our masculine and feminine energy into complete harmony and neutrality. And any imbalance is how we would show up out of balance in relationships, or we would show up making choices that were out of balance for us, or seek things that when we went through the experience, we go, oh, like, I actually, that wasn't the right person for me to date, or that didn't actually feel like the most alignment for me. And we only make choices like that because of how our masculine and feminine energy is out of balance. And this brings me into the Adam and Eve parable, because Adam and Eve is a metaphor. And in that story, like, the snake gets Eve to take a bite of the apple, and that is a metaphor for how we, instead of turning towards the soulmate always living within our being, instead of turning towards honoring the heart of ourselves and the heart of others, we give our power away to outside experiences, saying this next person is going to give, like in dating, is going to give me the validation I haven't found in myself. This next casual hookup will give me the validation and reaffirm my worth that when I feel super unworthy or feel like I need a rebound after breaking up with someone. Or we, like, the ways we think a nice home or a big or a beautiful a expensive car like a Rolls Royce or like nice clothes are going to somehow make me feel better. And it's actually working with your deepest darkness and honoring your pain that actually makes you feel better. It isn't anything outside of you that comes as just bonus. And the feeling of good achieving something fades. Even someone that wins the Super Bowl, I've literally read articles about athletes talking about winning the Super Bowl and going, it lasted for like a day, and then it faded, and I thought this was what I worked my whole career for, and I realized more so that what my career was what I really enjoyed about my career is being competitive and being able. It was a wide receiver, and he was talking about being able to like do an amazing job as a wide receiver and beat cornerbacks. And that really was like being the best he could be at his position was really what brought him fulfillment. It wasn't any type of achievement or success that he achieved. It was just knowing he was doing his best every day at the job he was working, and recognizing that's like a motto for our life. Like, no partner, no home, no car, no amount of money is ever going to make you feel different than how you feel. It will last for a day or two and it will fade, and you'll go back to feeling exactly how you feel in this moment. And recognizing that any type of change I want to experience is change I'm going to have to find by changing how I relate to myself and finding fulfillment of, can I be a little bit better of a version of myself today? And that is where real fulfillment comes from. Is not some big outside lofty goal that I may or may not achieve. It's how good of a person can I be today? How much more aligned in consciousness? How much more kind and respectful can I be? How much more can I listen to my needs? If I have like lower back pain, right? Not ignoring my lower back pain, but going, okay, if I'm experiencing lower back pain, do I need to strengthen my lower back? Do I need to stretch my lower back more and add more movement to it? Or when I'm rotating my spine, do I realize that one side of my body rotates a lot easier than the other side, and I actually need to work on gaining greater rotation, twisting in one direction that will actually bring greater alignment and harmony to my spine. And it might be a little of all those things, but recognizing that when we're feeling pain, it's a call for our loving attention. And that is what creates the softness and soothness within ourselves and calmness within ourselves for us to then be better versions of ourselves day after day. And that's what really life is about. Life, the universe, God could give a shit about what you achieve. It cares about who you are. How much love do you embody? How respectful are you yourself? That's why we come to earth. We don't come here to build a beautiful outside life and be miserable on the inside. And we're only going to feel fulfillment and feel like we can be our best self when we're willing to work with our darkness and express it in healthy ways, and also willing to become curious of, why am I experiencing a noisy mind? Why am I experiencing these symptoms? Why am I experiencing emotional dysregulation? And how can I bring this into harmony? And if you ask the question, you will always be given an answer sooner or later. And I've even asked questions to spiritual teachers, like in a group forum, and it didn't get answered. And then like a week later, life brought me the answer. And so, and like I've talked about this in other videos, but like for a long time, I struggled with sexual fantasies. And what I learned about sexual fantasies is there is a part of my pain that was asking for me to look at it, and it was asking for me to acknowledge its pain. And I just started saying, I love you, sexual fantasies. Thank you for teaching me how to love something I didn't want to love. Thank you for reminding me that as I love this darkness, it's actually moving me into more unconditional love and accelerating my healing journey, and is actually a gift, and it's only a curse when I run from my sexual fantasies or pretend like they aren't happening, or pretending like it's not a part of my mind that doesn't need healing. And when I can face it and become curious of it, it actually helped accelerate the peace and harmony, and I would even say enlightenment of my mind. And enlightenment is it's not a state. It's like an endless journey. Like your soul is already enlightened, and the journey of life is, how much pain can I clear out of my body to create and harmonize myself and the pain I clear out of my body creates the space for my soul to step more into my body. And the spiritual practices I do of praying and meditating, or setting in positive intentions for my day, it's actually aligning me with the energy of my soul and bringing more enlightenment to my body. And like, you are already the highest force in existence, and it's just about how much of that power can you embody in this body. Right? You're a spirit. You are the highest force in existence coming to have a human experience. You aren't a human trying to be spiritual or trying to be enlightened. That's not the journey. The journey is bringing the heaven that you are into the earth of your body, and recognizing that the more we work with our darkness, the more it actually is going to rise our kundalini energy. And the snake is really, in that metaphor of Adam and Eve, is actually meant to weave Adam and Eve together, kind of like the weaving of DNA. And and that happens that happens within our heart first. And I said this in the last video, that if you're 18 and you feel like you met your soulmate, and maybe you guys aren't really feeling like the most whole and complete when you met them, that doesn't mean that they're not your soulmate. And that doesn't, maybe you're just on a different journey of you found your partner first and you guys are both growing together in a beautiful way that is going to lead to your highest path and timeline, right? We're all going to do this a little differently. But if your partner isn't here, this is the real in your life, this is the real message of, okay, and even if you're in a relationship, okay, how the ways I look for validation and worth outside of myself need to die. And I give that power I give away to the outside and bring it back into me, which is actually the masculine within me that often is out of balance for most people that overseek, oversearch in their life for whatever they're seeking and searching for, whether that's a partner, sex, fame, money, or just people appreciating them more often. Like, it's taking all that and turning it towards the feminine heart. And when we do that and the masculine and feminine merge together is when our kundalini weaves those two energies into harmony with one another completely. And it's what we came here to embody. And when we do that, that is the foreshadowing for heaven and earth being birthed on the planet. And people think, oh, it's the outside action that creates heaven on earth, and that is a part of it. But the deeper truth is the more people that fully let go of their over-seeking, over-searching, and the avoidance of their pain, and they take those two patterns and they let go of them and work to turn towards their own pain and heal their own pain and address the disharmony within their mind, heart, and body. And that's all a process, and things, things are going to take a long time to heal even when we start to do that. But when we start to do that, the kundalini weaves the masculine and feminine together within our being that creates complete neutrality, and actually is what allows and actually starts, and with that, with the feminine starting to turn towards its pain and the masculine letting go of its overseeking tendencies, like, you integrate all your pain, and the integration creates harmony for your soul to step more into your body. And your soul, you could even think, is always complete balance, masculine and feminine energy, but we need to find the balance in our body of that in order for the soul to step more into our body. And there's like one last point I kind of wanted to hit on with this, which was around like sensuality. And I really feel like, one of the things, like, sex can be a little bit more primal and animalistic. And eventually humanity will move in a direction of moving beyond sex completely. And like, even beings that are more enlightened, like Jesus or like Kuan Yin, like, they weren't having sex with a bunch of people. they were they were resting in, like, they were resting in, I almost want to say they were resting in the sex and the merging of their masculine and feminine energy, and there is like, okay, when you do that, you're still gonna feel animalistic and more primal parts. And I talk about this, like, singing about your desires will help soothe those patterns. And also, I really believe a big step would be a big step is like expressing sensuality, which I think, like, people in our culture, and at least in the United States, like, it's very 0 to 100. Like, either I'm either like not exploring touch with people at all, or I'm having sex with a bunch of people. And when we're having sex with a bunch of people, one, it's feeding our unworthiness, that we don't feel strong, like worthy enough to set strong boundaries. It also is opening us up to anyone else's darkness that they haven't worked through, and essentially giving that darkness an open entry into us. Like, whenever you have sex with someone, you're going to receive the good and bad of that person. And and even if we were like enlightened and everyone was enlightened on this planet, like you would still, if you were having sex with a bunch of people, you would still be like receiving energy that you didn't want to be like, right? Like if an artist was having sex with an engineer, it like you're essentially opening yourself up to engineer energy, which isn't actually your purpose or mission on this planet. Your purpose, like if you really identify with being an artist, your purpose and mission is being an artist. And so recognizing that it's actually really important to have good boundaries, so that way I'm not receiving energies that are going to take a long time to move out of my system, that aren't really aligned with my purpose or mission on this planet. If we've had a bunch of casual sex in the past or still working through patterns of casual sex, it's okay. Every day is a new day, and eventually those energies will work your way out of it, out of you. Like there's nothing that you never can create too much. As long as you're still alive, you can always heal. There's always greater healing. And where our consciousness and our bodies are at now, some things are going to take a lot longer to repair, or might not be, or might be really hard to fully repair due to how much damage was caused to that area of our body. But I really believe that anything can be healed, and the more we connect with divinity and the more we integrate our darkness, the more space there actually is for healing within us. And bringing it back to sex, it's like, okay, if having sex with a bunch of casual people or casual like sexual relationships isn't really that good for me, how do I express these more primal and animalistic parts? And I would say like sensuality is essentially like, for me, I go to ecstatic dance, and you can dance with other people there, and or even probably some Latin dances are a little bit more sensual in nature. But finding an outlet where, okay, maybe we're expressing more of our primal or desire parts, but it's just a dance, and we're not really crossing the skin barrier, or you're not really making out with anyone, and it actually prevents you from really receiving anyone's energy that you wouldn't be, because your greatest your greatest like boundary essentially is your skin. And as long as you're not really letting someone underneath your skin, you're not really going to receive like any negative energy from them, being like exploring touch with them. And for me, like that's really how I live my life, is like like cuddling with people, and having dances with people that might be more sensual, that help express my primal and animalistic parts without really moving it into a sexual space. And recognizing the difference between sensuality and sexuality is, sexuality is essentially like touching people's erogenous areas and building arousal in those areas. And if you do that, what you'll realize is it will always push you closer and closer to sex. And sensuality is essentially touching anywhere else in those, anywhere else, and just feeling the senses rather than necessarily building ton of arousal. And even the sensuality, there might be arousal. And I would even say like, you could probably, like, if you're touching someone's like butt or boobs, like as long as you're not building arousal in that area, you probably would be fine. It's more so the fact of like, when I'm building a bunch of arousal, and that usually is like the only accomplished through touching people's erogenous areas, like that's what's going to throw me into sex, or what's going to prevent me from really having good boundaries in this dance or relationship. And um I just thought that was important to talk about, because I think like a lot of people, I think we really all crave touch, and the people that crave sex the most are the people that really crave touch and expressing some of their primal parts a little bit more. And it's like, okay, if I'm going to talk about how like casual sex isn't really supportive to you, what is the solution, or what's a healthy outlet? And I would really say sensuality, of like maybe doing Latin dance or trying a local ecstatic dance in your area, and exploring touch with people and cuddling with people, but recognizing it's just a dance. And when you're more sensual with people, your codependent parts are going to get a little bit more activated, and you're going to have thoughts maybe the next day of, I need this person, i want to I want to date this person or whatever, and recognizing that's just my codependent parts, and that's not something I really need to listen to, but that's just something for me to be aware of. And it's actually, as I don't feed those parts and maybe even activate them a little through dancing, it actually, with sensual or being a little bit more primal, dancing with people, it actually helps integrate those parts a little bit quicker. um, and so I hope that that helps. And I hope that brings awareness to how we can like work with our darkness a little bit more, and learning to welcome and be curious with our darkness. And when we start to welcome our darkness is actually when we start aligning ourselves, and our kundalini life force energy will start to rise a little bit more, which is really a rising of our power, because that is, it's essentially, I can handle more power and more vitality in life within me, because I've learned to harmonize with the parts of myself that are in disharmony, which in expressing them in healthy ways prevents me from taking my pain out from others, which the universe goes, okay, they're ready for more power. They're ready to handle more responsibility, because they now are no longer someone that could use this power unconsciously or use this power to hurt others. And our kundalini energy eventually evolves from a snake to a dragon. And I really love connecting with dragons and feeling the power of dragons. And they're beings that really embody the greatest power in the universe. And if we wish to embody greater power, one, when you do that, you realize that the greatest power I can embody is being strong in my compassion and soft in my power. And if we want to be more powerful, we have to learn how to be soft with ourselves, and two, calling on dragons more often to help this world, and to harmonize ourselves more with their energy. And just saying dragons of the highest light or my dragon guide will be someone you could call on. But we wish to be more powerful, dragons are a great being to build an altar to, or to pray to more often, because they are really beings of the greatest power and protection. And it's what our kundalini energy, the snake of our kundalini, transforms into when we're ready to handle more power by integrating our darkness. So I hope that helps. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.